Wonderful. Well, we're so glad you're here. This is the third class in our series this year of Embracing Wellness. And I don't know if any of you were able to attend the documentary on June 17th called Fed Up. But that was a wonderful experience that really opened my eyes. And what we've decided to do is just kind of continue on with that sugar theme as Hope discusses the very, very timely and controversial topic of grains tonight. And so we want this to be very interactive. We want you to be able to ask any questions that you may have for both me or for Hope. So please, you can either save them to the end or raise your hand during. That's completely fine. I think you all may have gotten a schedule for the remaining 2 sessions for our Embracing Wellness series for this year. October 21st is Q&A with yours truly. So that means you can come and ask me any question that you have, whether it's something as mundane as nutrition or exercise, or something as extravagant as, let's see, let me pick a really good one. Like my doctor just told me that I need to be on a very protein-rich diet, so I think I'm going to go and start trying the ketosis diet. So can you tell me about that, and what are the benefits? And so there's a lot of talk in the lay press about the optimal diet these days. Should it be carb restrictive? Should it be paleo? Which fats are good? Which fats are bad? We've unfortunately in this country been given several different versions throughout the years of how to eat an optimal diet. So you can bring any nutrition questions that you have. You can bring hormone-related questions. You can bring questions about your children, your dad, your mom, anything at all that's health-related that maybe they're not getting answers with their own doc, and I will give it my best to try to answer those. However, there are rules. It is not to try to stump Dr. Couri, but you can if you want. I'm not very good with history, so don't ask me any historical questions. But there, in your packet tonight, there's a sign-up sheet, so you can either, if you know what questions you want to ask, you can either write those out and leave those with us tonight, or you can, if you want to go home and really think up some doozies, you can email them to us at CouriCenterWellness@yahoo.com. And we just ask if you could get those questions to us by October 15th. So that way I'll have a chance to look over all of them and answer as many as I possibly can, because we want that to be a very productive evening. I want to make sure that I can answer any and all of your questions. And then we did add another session that may not be on your schedule, and that is for November the 18th, because for those of you who may remember, I was going to speak on hormones, but then the documentary Fed Up was available and it came to Peoria, so we decided, you know what, we're going to go see Fed Up. I can talk about hormones any day of the week. So we decided to reschedule that, so it's now November 18th, and the topic is going to be, you don't have to live with it, because I think so many of our symptoms can be related to hormone imbalance, and a lot of times it's just assumed by all of us that we have to live with it. It's a part of aging, it's a part of menopause, it's a part of andropause. So that talk is not just going to be restricted to women. We're going to invite men as well, because I'm also going to talk about andropause, which is male menopause, and how men are affected by hormonal imbalances as well. So I definitely encourage you to attend that. Bring your husband, your boyfriend, your dad, your brother, coworker. And we'll talk about this book that night. It's called You Don't Have to Live With It. But for anyone who wonders if they are suffering from a hormonal imbalance and their voice hasn't been heard yet, or they just feel like they haven't come to any answers, I strongly recommend reading this book. It's a quick book. You can read it in probably an hour or less. And it's a very, very well-written book by Dr. Tutera. And he's a colleague that I had the wonderful opportunity to train with a few weeks ago in Arizona. And we have these available if you guys would like to read those. So that's all I am going to say, because I don't want to steal Hope's thunder, but I did just kind of want to get everybody up to speed about what's happening at the Couri Center, because there's lots of exciting things happening, lots of changes coming down the pipe. The other last bit of news is for all of you who are familiar with our wellness program. It's called our TLC program. It's our 15-week wellness program that is really based on lifestyle changes. We've had great success with that program. So many women have gone through that program, and they consistently ask us, is there any place in town that does this for men? Because my husband has seen how wonderfully I've done, and he really wants to do it. Or my dad has seen the wonderful changes that I have made. And we kept telling him, no, unfortunately there isn't. Well, now there is. We're now opening up our TLC wellness program to men. So that's exciting. So like I said, there's lots of wonderful, exciting news going on here, and we're just so excited to be able to share it with all of you. And you guys are the first to hear of that. So, all right. With no further ado, I would like to turn it over to Hope Placher. Oh, I forgot one more thing. A very, very happy 42nd anniversary to Hope's parents,
Yay.
Ted and Mercy. And we're grateful that you came to spend your anniversary evening with us.
I'm sure you never thought that you would be spending it, in a gynecologist's office. So I so let me get situated here. I'm not very tech savvy. Thankfully, I have backup tonight. So, can you guys hear me? Is that kind of low? Sorry. That'll work. Okay. Nonetheless, so tonight, I have the pleasure of talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that's grain. And we're not just limiting it to gluten. Everybody knows I like to talk about gluten a whole heck of a lot. But I chose this topic, a couple months ago when we were kind of brainstorming ideas of things that I thought might be kind of, applicable to a lot of the patients that I see. And so, we used to only associate grains with digestive problems, like celiac disease, things like that. But what we've come to find is that grains are causing problems in each and every one of us, just at different degrees, okay? And so grains are now more of a problem of our nervous system and not so much a problem of our digestive tract, although it still can be. So the foundation of my discussion tonight is based on the book Grain Brain. Okay, has anybody read Grain Brain by Dr. David Perlmutter? Yeah, I figured quite a few people had. And here's the man himself, Dr. David Perlmutter. Doesn't he look so happy in between Dr. Couri and I? We had the opportunity to listen to him and learn from him this summer at a conference in Chicago. And he became a mentor of sorts to me because he really thinks outside the box of what is causing inflammation in our life. And now he is a board-certified neurologist. That's his background. So talk about somebody who knows the brain. I mean, this guy literally wrote the book. And I mean that because when he was 19, when I was spending my summer working at a bakery, Dr. Perlmutter was spending his summers actually mapping the anatomic vasculature of the brain, because in the 70s, that was just in the time period where neurosurgeons started to use microscopes when they were operating to really see that innate vascularity. And so there wasn't an anatomy book that covered that yet. So he dissected cadaver brains and literally drew the anatomy of all the blood vessels that made it up. So he's kind of been, someone who's been a star in the neuro world for a while. But he understands from a different point of view because his father is also a neurologist, and his father has Alzheimer's disease as well. So he's seen, both sides of the coin. So I think, he's really special. But he also, practiced for about 10 years, and then he realized he became frustrated with Western medicine. People were coming in with Alzheimer's and dementia and MS, and all these really devastating diagnoses, and he was able to give them maybe a prescription that would improve their quality of life for maybe 7 months, and that frustrated him. So he started sort of thinking outside the box of what is fueling, the fire of this inflammation that's causing the root cause of all these neurodegenerative diseases. And so I think that his message is so important, and I think his book, albeit amazing, and you can see mine is, highlighted and paged crinkled because I've read it, quite a few times. I think it's kind of hard to get through, so I didn't tell him that, of course, but it's a wonderful book. So my goal tonight is just to highlight the real high points. And as you can see, I still haven't found the sleeve of my book, and he pointed that out to me. I didn't make a very good first impression when I met him with my rinky cover. But I want to start out with just a little public service announcement. And as I was brainstorming, what I was going to cover tonight, this public service announcement from the 80s kept coming into my head. So I wanted to try to play it for you guys. Now, you've probably seen it before. You may not attribute it to grains, but I think I want you to exchange the word drug for grains, okay? Just hold on. I may need my techo assistant, Danny, to see if I can get this to play, okay? Okay, who remembers this?
Oh, yeah. Who still isn't clear about what doing drugs does? Okay, last time. This is your brain. This is drugs.
On break.
This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
Awesome. That was it. That's as simple as it gets. I love that video. I remember it as a child. You might remember too. But tonight I posed the question: do you believe this statement to be true or not? That the fate of your brain is in your DNA. If you are destined to have Alzheimer's disease, if you are destined to have MS, there's absolutely nothing that you can do to change that. Okay, so you don't have to tell me your answer right now, but I want you to think about it, okay? So inflammation, what is it? Inflammation, in my opinion, is a good thing in a small amount. So it's an indicator from our body that we are defending ourselves from potential harm, right? So when you sprain your ankle and it gets swollen and red and painful, that's inflammation, okay? When you get a bug bite and that bite gets big and red and itchy, that's inflammation. And hopefully it only lasts, for a couple days. But chronic inflammation is bad, and that's what grains can be doing. They can be leading to chronic inflammation. And I think now it's pretty widely accepted in, Western, mainstream medicine that inflammation can be the driving force behind heart disease and chronic illness. That's not really a radical idea, but I don't think a lot of people talk about what the driving force behind that magic word of inflammation is. So tonight I pose the idea that grain consumption leads to inflammation. Okay, I'm going to make that statement. It's bold, but I believe it. I believe it to be true. Okay, so inflammation, especially from grains, can lead to ADHD, can exacerbate anxiety, mood disorders, memory problems, difficulty concentrating, things that a lot of times we've all dealt with in some sense or another. But inflammation can be going on without us actually feeling anything. That's why I called tonight's presentation, grain is a silent killer, because you don't always feel it in your brain or in your body, okay? So it can start, this fire of inflammation can start as just kind of a hot ember that you don't really notice, but then your lifestyle or toxins or other things can really exacerbate that inflammation and create it into a hot, hot fire. And by that point, it may be more difficult to reverse the damage that's been done, okay? So we need to switch gears. I've just, given you a little taste of maybe what inflammation is, but how does inflammation get started in our body? Okay, what's getting us there? So, what what is our body meant to use for fuel? Dr. Couri alluded to, what's the optimal diet? We've all read health magazines. You pick up any one, you're going to be told any different number of things. It's hard to know. Okay, but I wanted to get to the bottom of what is the most effective way, the most effective fuel for my body to work. So I started reading from a PhD. His name's Dr. Loren Cordain. He wrote The Paleo Solution. He's based out of University of Colorado. Brilliant man. I got the opportunity to hear him speak this summer as well. And he says to get that answer, Hope, we need to go back about 5 million years. Okay, let's take a trip in time. Back to our Pleistocene relatives. And so I go back this far because genetically we are very close to our relatives this far back in history, okay? They were primarily eating an omnivorous diet, so plants and meat, minimally processed, that was it. We don't really know, in what capacity, 40% carbs, 30%, we don't know any of that breakdown. But what's absent from this list, you'll see, is there was no dairy, and at this point there were no grains, okay? What else was absent was chronic disease. People were very lean, they were very muscular. They died at a young age, okay, but that was usually because of injury and infection and childbirth and things like that. But diabetes didn't exist, okay? So fast forward, and we actually didn't start consuming grains until about 10,000 years ago. So relatively not that long ago on the evolutionary clock. About 9,000 years ago is when we started introducing dairy. Because when you think about it, at this point, these are wild animals. And have you ever tried to approach a wild animal and milk it? It wasn't a safe way to go. That's when they died at a young age. So 2,500 years ago is when sucrose was added to our diet. There's sugar. And then it wasn't until 150 years ago, not that long ago, we started using feedlot meats instead of wild animals. 120 years ago, refined grains. And then 93 years ago, our friend Wonder Bread came to play. Okay, so we essentially have introduced a lot of foreign foods in a relatively short period of time, okay? And our body, although very adaptable, hasn't really been able to handle it very well. So when I talk about what our body is meant to use for fuel, we have to sort of learn from our history to understand where we need to go in the future, okay? So I want a t-shirt that says this, respect your genes, okay? Our dietary habits, like I said, have changed at a really fast pace, but our genes have not. Our genes are only 3% different than they were from our hunter-gatherers 10,000 years ago, okay? But our nutrition and our cellular needs have not changed either. So I think as a rule, biological organisms are healthiest when their life circumstances are most closely approximated to the conditions for which, they were selected. So we know, kind of what our ancestors ate, and they were pretty healthy. So how did we get so far away from that? When we think about what we eat today, who tells us, we need X amount of servings of grains, X amount of servings of fruit, X amount of servings of fat. If I'm picking on grains, isn't that what you've all been told to eat, right? Eat your whole grains. You have to get X amount a day. So I'm kind of fighting against the current right now. So those are, I'm sure, all statements that you've heard or have been told at some time. So to understand who's guiding what's healthy, we have to go back in time a little bit more again. So this is just in 1910. This isn't too far back. There was a study in Russia where two groups of rabbits were fed their usual herbivore diet, and then the other group of rabbits were fed a very cholesterol-rich diet. And it's no surprise the little rabbits that had all the cholesterol, well, they died of heart attacks and had high rates of atherosclerosis, okay? Not really the best model, because how many rabbits do you see go out and eat, a cholesterol-ridden steak, okay? They don't, because that's not what they were programmed to eat. It makes no sense, so not a good model, but it started to lay the groundwork for what would become the lipid hypothesis. And so fast forward to the early 1950s, Dwight Eisenhower had a heart attack. There were over 500,000 people in the United States that were dying of heart attacks, so it was coming to the forefront. And an American scientist named Ansel Keys, he released what was called the 7 Countries Study. And this was an epidemiological study. I don't know if you can see, I know that's real tiny on your screen, but he looked at, or he published at least 7 different countries, and he looked at the intake of their fat content in their diet versus how many people were actually dying. And so it looks like a really pretty curve. I mean, if you're a statistician, that's what you want things to look like, right? Because the more fat intake, the higher the likelihood that you would die. But Mr. Keyes wasn't very forthcoming with his data because there were actually 22 countries that he looked at, but he left 15 of them out because they didn't fit and support his hypothesis. So not really good science. And who would have thought Mr. Keyes would then go on to work for the government? Okay, so he did. And in 1955, he actually presented this information at the World Health Organization in Geneva. So this is really what laid the foundation that fat is bad and we need to stay away from it for our health, okay? And then, do you guys remember this article from Time magazine in 1984? Yeah. It was about the early 1980s. That's when our first guidelines from the USDA came out. It was a food pyramid at the time. Remember, with grains being at the bottom, and it went up in servings of what we were supposed to eat to be healthy. Because in the 80s, everything was about low fat. Snackwells, low-fat cookies, you remember those? You know, low-fat dressing. Fat was horrible. And so when you remove all these calories from fat, that deficit needs to be replaced with something. So what do they suggest it be replaced with? Whole grains, right? And sugar. Because when you take fat out, you need sugar to replace the flavor, because it tastes like garbage. And so they recommend this whole grains because, well, let me take a step back. This is where we are today. Apparently the pyramid was really hard to wrap your mind around. So we now have a plate, okay? This is the plate. And you know, the USDA says for good health, eat a variety of foods from each food group every day. And this is the breakdown of what they think that you need, okay? But I hate this plate. I hate this plate because we are sicker than ever, okay, as a country. It's sad to say, but it's a fact. 1 in 3 adults have diabetes, okay? And we've been following this guideline for 20 years, okay? And in fact, type 2 diabetes has grown by 166% since the USDA laid out guidelines for what we need to eat. So I don't think it's working very well, okay? If my job was on the line based on how many people were getting diabetes, I would have been fired a long time ago. You know, 1 in 4 Americans are gonna die from heart disease, okay? And this is one of my, the worst statistics that I really came across. 1 in 3 seniors at the time of their death have dementia or Alzheimer's. 1 in 3. That statistic scares me. It scares me a lot. And so tonight when I talk about grains, I pick on wheat a lot. I do, I admit it. But grains encompass a lot of different things. And one thing I want to point out especially, corn is a grain. It's not a vegetable. Contrary to what your mom might have told you, when you were a child, corn's a grain, okay? So I'm kind of using the term grain interchangeably with all these. So wheat, I think, on paper, take a look again, hard to see, but this is the nutrient profile of wheat, whole wheat, versus just regular processed and milled white flour. On paper, whole wheat looks phenomenal. It's got 2, if not 3 more times the nutrient value as compared to, processed white flour. So I think that's been part of the driving force as to why, if you're gonna eat wheat, you better eat your whole grain pasta, not your white pasta, because that's bad. So on paper it looks good, but wheat is really complex, and we don't really give it enough credit. So let's break it down a little bit. This is a schematic of what wheat is composed of. There's protein molecules, there's lectins, and I'm not going to talk about all of it, don't worry. I could, but I won't, I promise. But I'm going to talk about 3 of what I find to be the most important and detrimental components of wheat. So number 1, gluten. You guys know, again, I love talking about gluten. Gluten is Latin for glue. So when you see a pizza crust being stretched out and it's nice and stretchy, that's gluten doing its job, okay? That nice yummy bread that's fluffy and tear it off, that's gluten, okay? But it's made of a combination of 2 really important proteins, gliadin and glutenin, okay? Gluten is not just found in wheat, it's also found in the other grains listed up there. You have to know that gluten is also used as an additive in many foods. For those of you, I see a lot of my patients here who I know have gone gluten-free. You know it's tricky, isn't it? When you're trying to avoid it, because this additive is meant to be a shelf stabilizer. So it's going to be in salad dressings, it's going to be in things that you think there's absolutely no way that there should be wheat in this product, but it is. And ladies and gentlemen, personal care products are loaded with gluten. Bath & Body Works is the worst culprit. So look on the package labels. It's tough. They make it really hard. And we actually consume, not grain, but gluten, about 5 teaspoons of gluten every day. Just the average American. That's a lot. Okay, so let's go talk about gliadin. So I think gliadin is like public enemy number 1, okay? So gliadin is a protein, and I want you to think of your intestinal tract. Just, there are these little finger-like projections on the inside of your GI tract, and they're called microvilli. And if you can't picture it, just think of shag carpet, because that's kind of what it looks like. And their jobs of these fingers are to actually absorb, the nutrients. And underneath your shag carpet is like a thin layer of cheesecloth, and it's very, very tightly woven. And it's meant to be tightly woven because we want to be selective with what we let in to our, to our blood flow. And so what gliadin does is takes that cheesecloth and it actually separates it. So there's huge gaping holes. Okay, so we're not as selective anymore with what nutrients or what foreign objects can come in and out. And so when foreign objects can enter our bloodstream, that's when we get food sensitivities. That's when we get cross reactions to other foods. So gliadin damages our digestive tract, we know that. It's also an exorphin, okay? It can cross the blood-brain barrier. And it binds to receptors, and that's how it affects our mood, okay? So this is what they think. This is the protein that they think. If you've heard, that there's been some recommendations of children with ADHD to go on a wheat-free or a gluten-free diet, it's because gliadin, they found it can actually exacerbate those outbursts and intensify their mood. Gliadin has also been linked to auditory hallucinations, social detachment in those with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, because it can, again, pass through that blood-brain barrier that's otherwise, like a solid rock for most things to get through. And lastly, gliadin is an appetite stimulant, okay? So do you wonder why they put gluten in so many foods? It makes you hungry, okay? So that's gluten. Let's talk about lectins next, okay? Lectins are components of all grains, not just wheat, but all grains. They're also found in nuts, they're found in dairy and the nightshade vegetable group to some capacity, but they're heaviest in grains. And within wheat, there's something called wheat germ agglutination, or WGA. And this is a protective molecule. It's very effective against pests. So this is why naturally it occurs in a lot of foods. Okay, and I don't mean to gross anybody out here. Talk about digestion a lot, so things I might not think are inappropriate, you may. But have you ever eaten something and it's kind of come out the other end in its whole form? Have you ever seen it in the toilet? Well, that's lectin, okay? Because lectin resists digestion. Same thing if a bird has ever kind of messed something on your windshield. Yeah. And you see there's like little seeds in bird droppings, okay? That's so a bird can eat a seed, it resists digestion, it gets defecated out, and it can still grow and become a plant. Okay, that's lectin. It's actually a really great quality, except that when we eat it, that lectin sticks to our digestive tract like glue, okay? And it disables our digestive tract to repair itself like it normally would. It can bind to any tissue in our body, not just in our digestive tract. And when it does that, our body recognizes that new tissue structure as foreign, activates our immune system, and that's how we can get autoimmune conditions of our thyroid, any part of our body. Okay, that's lectin. Importantly, I don't want to forget that lectin blocks our body's ability to bind and utilize vitamin D. Vitamin D is hugely important. It's important for our mood. Of course, it's important for our bone health. But a 7-year study looked at 500 women, and those with the highest vitamin D levels had a 77% lower risk for Alzheimer's. So that's important. That can't be missed, okay? Finally, phytate, number 3, okay? Phytate is an anti-nutrient. So remember that chart that listed all the good nutrients that was in, you know, whole wheat? Well, think of phytate as a magnet, because phytate is going to bind calcium and magnesium and zinc and iron, and it's not going to allow your body to absorb all the good nutrients that are naturally found in wheat. Not only are you not going to absorb what's in the wheat, but that magnet is going to suck out these same nutrients from your own body's stores. Okay, that's why it's called an anti-nutrient. So it's found in all whole grains. It works in a dose-dependent manner. The more you eat, the more nutrients are coming out. You're getting a negative effect. Okay, this has nothing to do with the brain, but I couldn't go on without saying it because I see women with osteoporosis and osteopenia every single day. And I see women that are very frustrated because they're either on supplements or they're on prescription medication and their bones continue to get worse. Consider cutting out grains because this is sucking very, very important nutrients out of your body.
Oh, are you saying that all of these effects can occur to anyone, not just those sensitive to gluten?
Excellent point. All of these 3 molecules that I just talked about affect each and every one of us in this room. This is not selective to those who have tested positive for gluten sensitivity or celiac disease. Yep. So that's why I said it's occurring in all of us to different degrees, okay? Because all of our immune systems work differently. We all have, you know, different genetic susceptibilities, okay? Thanks for bringing that up. This ain't your mama's gluten. Everybody always asks me, well, you know, my mom, and we always ate bread growing up, you know, she wasn't sick. Well, you know, the grains that we're eating today bear very, very little resemblance to the grains that we started to eat 10,000 years ago, not even that far back, but genetically modified grains, which started coming into our diet in the 50s, they contain up to 40 times the gluten that grains even, you know, 30 or 40 years ago had. So you're right, this is completely something that you cannot compare, you know, to the food that we ate in the past. But wheat has been genetically modified to improve the yield. So I get this question a lot. So if grains are so bad, didn't Jesus break bread? And he did. I think it's a very valid question. I absolutely do. But bread back in that time frame was emmer wheat. It only had 28 chromosomes on it. The bread that we eat today is a dinkel wheat, and it actually has 42 chromosomes on it. So it's totally different structure, and our body recognizes it as so. Okay? Here's just a couple easy definitions. Celiac disease is a true allergy to gluten. Okay? It's an IgA reaction in your body. About 1 in 133 people have been diagnosed with celiac disease. That's a pretty low number. They think it's closer to 1 in 30. But it takes 6 to 10 years for people with celiac disease to get diagnosed because most of them don't come in complaining of diarrhea and abdominal pain. They've been coming to see their physician for headaches, for depression, for fatigue, for you know, fibromyalgia, and we've been treating everything but the problem. Okay, a gluten intolerance, okay, this is a sensitivity. And it can involve any organ in the body. It can leave your small intestine completely untouched. And an estimated 1 in 10 people are gluten sensitive, okay? So you do not need, this needs to be loud and clear, you don't need to have any overt GI symptoms to have a reaction to gluten, okay? A very, very common symptom of gluten are headaches, okay? I see that a lot. A lot of women come in with headaches. And this is an MRI of someone who's gluten sensitive. And it doesn't take a radiologist to read. You can see on, oh, I think Danny said I have a pointer. On top, you see all that white matter. And this is a normal MRI on the bottom. So you can tell there's a big difference. There's a lot of inflammation. And in the nervous system, there's gray matter and there's white matter. So gray matter, think of it like a computer. That's the processing unit. The white matter are the cables that connect everything. Okay, so that's a problem. And I'm just going to share one case study with you guys. I thought of a lot as I was thinking about my patients that have had issues with grain, but probably one of the one that's blown me away is a patient. She's only 38. She's very young, and she works at a I don't think she's here. I'm not going to say her name. Don't worry. But she works at a local establishment that actually makes bread. Okay, and she herself is a vegan, but she eats eggs occasionally. And she came in because she just felt really run down, really fatigued. She couldn't concentrate. She didn't think she was functioning well at work. She gained about 20 pounds, but had been eating essentially the same diet, you know, for the majority of her adult life. And she had eczema. That was the other thing. She had some weird rashes that we couldn't figure out. And so I said, you know, let's just give it a shot. Let's just do some food sensitivities. I'm not sure if we're shooting in the right direction or not. And so they came back, and she's got MS. Forgot the biggest part. She's got MS. She's 4 years into a diagnosis of MS. Okay. And so we did food sensitivities testing, and sure enough, she came back at the highest level for every single grain that was available on the test, as well as dairy. Okay. Otherwise, her food sensitivity testing was clear. I was really surprised. So she was very gung-ho. She said, Hope, I'm going to get rid of it all. Even though I'm going to stay a vegan, I'm going to cut out the grains. I can do it. I'm not going to eat at work. And I didn't hear from her for a while. I started her on a probiotic. I started her on orthomolecular's orthobiotic. I started her on a fish oil. She was already taking a multivitamin. And I also used a product called Inflammacor because she was kind of bloated, so I thought that might help a little bit too. I didn't hear from her for 3 months. I thought she ditched me. And then she came back for her follow-up, and she had lost 12 pounds. She still hadn't started exercising. I didn't harp on her, but she had lost 12 pounds. She actually got a new job because she felt so, like her mental clarity was so much better. She finally had the courage. She applied and got a new job, so she was thrilled for that. And she had, every 6 months, she would get MRIs to follow her MS. And for the first time, her MRI came back improved. Okay? It had constantly deteriorated over the last 4 years, and it finally turned around. And, you know, maybe it wasn't the food sensitivity, you know, who's to say, but I feel pretty strongly that played a really big part in improving her symptoms. So that's my patient. She's doing great. I just saw her a couple weeks ago. So moving on. This is your brain on grain. Okay, we talked about gliadin, and when you break down and digest grains, it will create this morphine-like compound that passes through your blood-brain barrier, like we talked about, and it hooks onto your opiate receptors in the brain. Okay, opiates are drugs like morphine, heroin, Oxycontin. You know, they're powerful drugs, and gliadin, the protein found in gluten, can activate this in your brain. Have you ever eaten a donut and just kind of been like, you know, you felt that relaxation? That's gluten. That's a real chemical reaction in your brain. And it creates this kind of high, this relaxation, this euphoric feeling. And we know we can block that feeling because we give people the same drugs like we would give a heroin addict. We'd give them something like Narcan, okay, or Suboxone to stop that chemical reaction, to block the drug. We give it to people who eat wheat, and they go through withdrawal symptoms. They start dropping their mood. They get pretty cranky for a couple weeks. Not only that, but they eat about 400 calories less a day. Because remember, this is an appetite stimulant. So it naturally, you know, lowers your appetite. Okay? Wheat's a real downer. So how does it affect our moods? Okay? So one mechanism that can explain this is that gliadin and these other smaller proteins inhibit the production of serotonin. Okay? Serotonin's our feel-good hormone, right? And so it increases our sense of well-being, helps us sleep, and improves our mood. And what we need to think about is that although we always think of, you know, our hormones like serotonin in our brain, 80 to 90% of these hormones are actually created in our digestive tract, in our gut. Okay, they're not made up here. So if we've been assaulting our digestive tract, whether we know it or not, we're decreasing the production of serotonin. We can't use it. I mean, there's a $1 billion industry for antidepressants that are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Well, they're not making any more serotonin in your body. But you could be if we can heal this digestive tract a little bit, okay? So that's where we think it comes from. And for people who have celiac disease, they have a 50% increased risk of depression, and that's a big number. So, we know that celiac disease is in fact injuring the lining of the small intestine. The gut can no longer absorb all the nutrients that it needs to produce that feel-good serotonin. And then, at the end, we end up with depression and an anxiety. Okay, this is powerful for me as a young woman who would someday like to have a family. I am gluten sensitive. For a couple years, they looked at about 764 children, and they drew and took a sample of the mother's blood while she was still pregnant before she delivered. And they followed these children, and 211 of them developed a mental disorder later in life. And children who were born to mothers who had abnormally high levels of antibodies, or their immune system was reacting to gluten or dairy, were nearly 50% more likely to develop schizophrenia in their life. That's powerful. So, to me this says, I really need to be testing my patients, especially those who are coming in for prenatal, preconception counseling, because it's affecting their unborn children. So let's talk about food a little bit more. Not so much down talk. Going back when I'm counseling patients on eating a gluten-free diet, I think a lot of times they look at the picture up top, and that's where their mind goes to the gluten-free aisle in the grocery store. I've been down that aisle many times myself, but I really want people to focus on naturally gluten-free, naturally wheat-free foods, and that's the picture below. Okay, those are our fruits, our vegetables, our meats, our nuts. Because I don't just care about the protein structure of wheats and grains. I care about what your body does when you eat it. How are you digesting it? Okay? So what happens when you eat a carbohydrate? Because in essence, that's really what grains are. When you take a bite of bagel, your body breaks it down into a simple sugar. It's almost the same thing as if you had just taken a teaspoon of sugar and swallowed it down too. Okay? That's how your body recognizes it. And so your pancreas responds to this influx of sugar by producing insulin. Insulin is going to transport that sugar molecule maybe to your liver to store it. Maybe it's going to transport it to your muscle. Wherever your body needs is where the sugar is going to go. But if you have some whole grain toast for breakfast, and then you have pretzels and hummus for your snack at 10, and then you've got a Subway sandwich and chips for lunch, and then whole grain pasta for dinner, you did a great job at skipping the fat, but you've just told your body throughout the day to make insulin numerous times. And we store this extra sugar that we're eating throughout the day as fat. So I see people who come in all the time. I've even said it myself. I am eating healthy. I am eating a low-fat diet, just like I've been told, and I am gaining weight. I can't lose the fat. I have fat genes. Has anybody ever thought that? I have fat genes. My mom's overweight. My sister was overweight. My children are overweight. And for a while, I thought that was just poppycock. It was like one thing people could say that would just set me on edge, that I have fat genes, because I thought it was ridiculous. But now, when people say that, in my head, I'm thinking, you're absolutely right. Now, I would never say that because I would probably get fired if someone, if I agreed that they had fat genes. But here's why. So when we go back and think about our hunter-gatherers, okay, so in the summertime, in the fall, that's when they would actually have grains and fruit and higher sugary content food to eat. So that was the time of plenty, so they would load up on that. And so as they had more sugar, as an adaptive response, their body is going to store that as fat. Because what comes after fall? Winter. And so that food is not as abundant then, so our body has the capability to use our fat as fuel. But in 2014, starvation time usually doesn't come for most of us. So we're constantly just storing the fat and storing the fat and storing the fat. And this relates, I care about this. You might say, why am I getting so off topic? Because of all these 4 foods, I'll talk about the glycemic index. Which do you think has the highest glycemic index, or which do you think turns into sugar the fastest in your body? Spot on, the bread. Your Snickers bar is actually the lowest, okay? Not that I'm condoning that, but the glycemic index, okay? This is a simple definition. There's a lot more that goes into it. My dietitian friends I know here can talk about it a lot more, but this is a score that's given to a food, and it talks about how rapidly that food gets turned into sugar in your body. And those are just some examples, okay? When you have heightened and elevated blood sugar indefinitely, what happens? What are you diagnosed with if your blood sugar is not controlled very well? Diabetes, right? 1 in 10 adults have type 2 diabetes, have uncontrolled blood sugar. And so for those over the age of 60, they're twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's. And they're 1.7 times more likely to develop dementia. This is going to be a big problem in our baby boomers. Is it not? Okay, America's aging, and we're not doing much to slow that. Okay, so I like this cartoon. I thought we need to break it out. It says the high carb diet I put you on 20 years ago gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Whoops. Okay, so it just goes to show, you know, we've gotten a lot of mixed messages with what we're supposed to eat and what's good for our body. But elevated blood sugar is toxic to the brain. So we're eating all these carbohydrates like our doctor told us to, but this elevated blood sugar can impair our cognition by the process of glycation. And glycation is very simple. It's a sugar molecule and it's a protein molecule. And that sugar, all this extra sugar, binds to the protein and it changes the shape, okay? Think of it like a little shard of glass that's floating throughout your body, nicking your blood vessels, okay? We know, that diabetics can have diabetic retinopathy. They can lose their vision. They have poor circulation. They can have easily, have wounds. It's all from glycation. It's all from this excess sugar, okay? This is also affecting, remember those fine blood vessels that Dr. Perlmutter studied? It's going on up there too. It's decreasing our blood supply. Okay, and we've all had our glycation checked at one point or another. You may not know it. Your hemoglobin A1C, has anybody gotten that lab checked? Really common. That is glycation. That is a marker of your hemoglobin, how much sugar has been bending and changing the structure of your iron. This is also a function of hemoglobin, okay? So the more blood sugar, the more glycated proteins that you have floating around in your body, the more volume you are going to lose in your brain. And we want surface area, okay? That's one part of our body. We do not want to shrink, okay? So I just, kind of beat grain up a lot. So what does the brain need, okay? We've just been told all these mixed messages of what we're supposed to have, but what does the brain need? I mean, look at this. Here's Ansel Keys on the end. He made Time magazine too. There's 1984. Did anybody see the latest edition of Time? This just came out a couple weeks ago. So Time, we'd always been told fat is bad, fat is bad. Well, 2014, fat is our friend. So let's party, right? But something our brain needs, cholesterol. We need cholesterol, okay? It is essential for the function of neurons. And neurons are what are, transmitting information through electrical and chemical signals in our brain. Okay, it's the building block of the cell membrane. It's a natural antioxidant for all those free radicals and glycation proteins that are floating around. Cholesterol is going to help nullify that. And it increases the ability to make new synapses in our brain. I don't want you to go to the Taste of Washington tonight and say, hopes that I could have cholesterol and go get a deep fried Twinkie. Not all fats are created equal. So we want to focus on the good fats, right? The omega-3s, your avocados, your coconut oil, nuts and eggs. And I was intentional and I said wild game and grass-fed meat. Okay, very intentional with that. There's a difference than feedlot meat that's been fed grains. Okay, because remember last year I told you, you are what you eat. Do you remember that? So whatever the animal is that you're eating, you're also ingesting what that was fed. Okay? So we've kind of hit this topic before, low cholesterol equates with low mood. Okay, this study showed that women aged 31 to 65 in the bottom 10th percentile for cholesterol levels experience significantly more depressive symptoms than others. You know, many. Oh yeah.
Is it in your blood cholesterol or what you're ingesting?
Excellent question. Yeah, excellent question. So, a lot of people don't know that when we check your cholesterol, about 80 to 85 of that number, that value, is what you are producing in your body. It's not what you're eating. It's counterintuitive, okay? So the more cholesterol that you eat, the less work your body has to do to make its own cholesterol. It's really tough for our liver to produce cholesterol. It takes a lot of work, okay? So that's why when so many people cut cholesterol out of their diet or they were put on a statin medication, sometimes their numbers would come down. But one of the biggest side effects of statin medication is memory impairment. Muscle soreness too, but memory impairment as well. It's kind of wild when you think about it. So I hope, did that answer your question? I hope that answered your question, yeah. So we need cholesterol, we need exercise. Okay, this is a no-brainer. Dr. Perlmutter spent a lot of time on this one. In fact, he writes a prescription for his patients 30 minutes a day, at least, okay? Exercise isn't just good for our waistline, but it turns on our longevity genes, okay? It targets something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, and this is located on our 11th chromosome, okay? And BDNF is powerful. BDNF actually allows us to create new brain cells, okay? So just as, you know, a stroke patient can learn to walk again, can learn new language, if we can turn this gene on, we can grow new brain cells. That's powerful to me. This is also from Neurology 2012. They found that, you know, Alzheimer's risk is also linked to your level of activity. So those in the lowest 10th percentile of activity had a 230% increase in developing Alzheimer's, okay? Not going to spend a lot of time on it. Dr. Couri talked about this a little bit, a ketogenic diet. What a ketogenic diet is, in a simple term, is it's kind of mimicking that starvation phase of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. So it's limiting your carbohydrate intake. You're eating primarily a diet of a high-fat, high-protein, very, very, very low carbohydrate diet. Women, you're getting like 15 to 20 grams of carbs a day. Men are a little bit more. If you're someone who's an athlete or a runner, you might have to, you know, change that a little bit. But he puts his patients who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or MS on a ketogenic diet, because his practice is set up a lot like ours is. He works with nutritionists on his staff, and every patient that comes through his door has a consultation with a dietitian. So this is just, again, kind of hard to see, but as you can see, the ketogenic diet is 65% fat, okay? 25% protein and only 10% carbohydrates. You know, it's a pretty tight thing to follow. And if you're interested in this, I definitely recommend meeting with a dietitian to help you really make this program successful.
And it has to be a particular type of dietitian. You can't just go to
Another good point, correct. Our friend Leslie here knows about the ketogenic diet. She says she can't hear me, but I know she can in there. Finally, the paleo diet. Oh, question.
So when they do a full cholesterol workup, there's no way to separate the good fats from the bad fats?
Good question. There is, okay?
HDL and LDL?
Well, and even more so than that, HDL and LDL, we've kind of gotten the runaround about them too. We've always been taught HDL is the good cholesterol, right? LDL is the bad cholesterol. Not true, okay? They're both good cholesterol molecules. LDL is actually what transports cholesterol up here, okay? When the problem happens is when LDL becomes oxidized or damaged. And we can check oxidized level of cholesterol, and we can learn what your cholesterol is made of through specialty testing, and not everybody offers it. You might not be able to get this testing at your PCP, but we do offer it here. It's something called the Health Diagnostic Laboratory. It's when we get to, the handout that I gave you guys about the lab markers that I suggest people have checked, those are all included on the Health Diagnostic Laboratory. It's covered by your insurance, awesome. And it really breaks down what your cholesterol is made of, the good cholesterol and the bad cholesterol. So that's what I recommend people get checked. Okay, I really don't care about total cholesterol.
And so that would make an impact on whether or not you really need a statin drug?
Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Good question. Oh yeah, okay.
4 different blood types, 4 different diets.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the first blood type for our hunters and gatherers?
That I don't know. I haven't read. That's a good question, Kay.
I think it's the O category.
Yeah, I think so too.
The O? Mm-hmm.
O category.
Mm-hmm. I think there is some truth behind the blood type diets and what we all will respond to, because you and I can eat the exact same paleo diet. You can lose 15 pounds, I can lose, gain 2 pounds. So our body chemistries are very different. So I think there's truth to that.
And your doctor that you and Dr. Couri had the good pleasure of being with?
Mm-hmm.
Stalking? And you said that he, at 19, he was doing research on cadavers?
Yes.
About the networking of the brain?
Mm-hmm.
And he is concerned about his father who has Alzheimer's?
Yes.
When I hear you talking, Dr. Wiles, you guys know him real well.
Mm-hmm.
Has this doctor or Dr. Wiles taken someone that does have the early onset of that challenge into a health food camp for a month and tested them to see through diet and testing and getting rid of all their medical medicines that really trash the body, in my opinion?
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody doing that?
Yes. He has a clinic, is Dr. Perlmutter.
But this gentleman here?
Yes, Dr. Perlmutter
Okay.
has a clinic in Naples, Florida, where he does just that. He has a very intensive treatment for people who have already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and other neurological conditions. But he is accepting patients. I'll give you a plug. I don't get any kickback.
I wonder if your insurance helps take care of that.
I don't know. I don't know.
I guess you can
Go to, you know what?
email him, do something.
I encourage everybody, again, this book is kind of wordy, but he's got a lot of specific examples in this book of his case studies. And he also has far more in depth of how you can utilize the information that I'm telling you right now. Okay?
And that's the book, Brain.
Grain Brain. Yeah, sorry, I don't have the sleeve. Okay. So the paleo diet is going back to eating like our ancestors. It can be made really complicated, or you can make it really simple. I'm not somebody who counts carbs. I don't count how many servings of things. I'm a dietitian's worst nightmare. I don't care about that stuff. I eat when I'm hungry, and I don't eat when I'm not hungry, okay? But it's real food. It's cutting out dairy, and it's cutting out grains. You can eat meat as long as it's, wild, grass-fed, okay? You can eat nuts, you can eat vegetables, you can eat fruit. And your carb goal is about 60 to 80 grams a day, but again, I don't really keep track of that stuff. Yeah.
A quick question on dairy. Is almond milk considered non-dairy then?
Non-dairy. That would be acceptable.
And their almond flour, that
Totally acceptable.
would be gluten-free?
Unsweetened, you got it, yeah. So we want to get the sugars out of it. Okay?
One more.
Yeah, okay.
I did that 10-day detox.
Yeah, you did.
No sugar, no carbohydrates, and for about 4 days, my brain was in withdrawal, and it was fuzzy in my
Yeah,
brain.
you were detoxing.
And it was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. People will feel that when you go off of wheat, too. If anybody's done it in here, too, you'll feel the same way, which was part of the sugar detox. But if you're interested in the paleo, these are 2 really good starting points that I guide people at. Practical Paleo, we have this book here if you're interested in it. I like it because it also has a ton of really easy, good recipes. It's written very clearly. Yummy book. And the paleo answer, this is Dr. Lauren Cordain, again, one of the gentlemen that I was able to learn from this summer. He is very black and white. I like his writing. It's not frilly, it's not fluffy, it's easy to get through. Going back to our brain, we need DHA, okay? These are the omega-3s, these are your fish oils, okay? So when you think of the time in development when our brain is growing the most rapidly, that's when we're infants, right? And don't you think it's curious that human breast milk is actually the richest source of DHEA in nature? So you need it as an infant, you need it as a child, you need it as a young adult, and certainly into our more mature years. So 1,000 milligrams of DHA every day is pretty conservative. It's safe. I recommend it for kids who are having hyperactivity, ADHD. It's great for them too. I love Nordic Naturals. I put that up there intentionally. They do one thing and they do it really well. They make fish oil and they make it pure. They have it for children. If you are vegetarian or vegan, they make it in algae oil. So it's really for the whole family. So Dr. Perlmutter, again, 1,000 milligrams a day is what you want to shoot for.
What was the brand name?
Oh, Nordic, N-O-R-D-I-C, Nordic, and then just the word natural. Nordic Natural. And so this next slide, can you tell I went to a lot of conferences this summer? Because I learned from, this is an Army physician, his name's Dr. Lewis, and he has spent the last about 10 years of his career treating traumatic brain injuries from the men and the women in our armed forces. Okay, so I have a lot of respect for him. So he found that physically, after they survived, a blast or anything like that, they were physically getting rehabilitation, but not a whole lot was being done for up here. It's just like having a very extreme concussion. So he kind of said, well, what do I have to lose for these guys? I understand the research that DHA and good fats and cholesterol is good for their brains, so why don't I start just mega dosing them on fish oil? Because what's the worst that's going to happen? And so he got clearance for this, and he made this protocol. This is for anyone at any time in their life that's ever had a head injury. And so you don't have to, it's hard to see, I know, but that brainhealtheducation.org, that is his not-for-profit website. And so if you're interested in learning more about a protocol that has really been shown to help improve the neurological function, I would go to that website. Okay.
I had a person that she had a concussion and the doctor advised that.
Wonderful. I mean, it's great to hear that. That's wonderful. That's the best news I've heard all day. Okay, so probiotics, super important. We knew, we learned that grains can be destructive to our digestive tract, so we need to give our digestive tract a little bit of TLC. We need to nourish our second brain. So a couple of my favorites up here, Orthomolecular, Orthobiotic is their daily probiotic that I use. So I will also flip-flop with Zymogen, another company that makes a great daily probiotic. But if anybody has Crohn's disease, colitis, if you've had food poisoning, if you've just been on a tough dose of antibiotics, you need more than a little daily dose. And so I go to, it's called Probiotic 225. It's a 15-day treatment of 225 billion little good bacteria in each packet that you take every day, and that'll supercharge you right up, okay? And tonight, before I forget, I'm supposed to relay a service announcement that if you're interested in purchasing any fish oil or any probiotics, we're going to offer them at 25% off tonight. So if you want to pick any up at the end, we've got some. Okay. So sleep is very important. You want to aim for at least 7 hours a night. Okay. That can be a struggle for a lot of us, but by 1 week of sleep deprivation, it's going to alter the function of over 711 genes in your body. Most of us have gone more than a week with getting a lousy night's sleep, okay? But we need those genes to be functioning because there are repair mechanisms. So they're going to help repair all the oxidation that's going on. And so sleep, hugely, hugely important. So this was the handout that I gave you guys. This is Dr. Perlmutter's markers for assessing brain-related illness. So this can be silently going on in your body. Okay, I've said that quite a few times tonight. So none of these labs that are listed on this piece of paper are really anything radical. Many of you probably have had them checked before, but if I've given you the values, if your values are above the values that I have listed here, there's a good chance that there's already some inflammation going on up top. So to kind of wrap things up, I hope you guys, maybe, I didn't want this message to be one of doom and gloom and go throw your grains out, but I really hope it's a message of hope, because I think that it saddens me to think that I don't have any control over my health, and the truth is we really have a lot of control over the health, especially that of our brain. We just need to learn how to talk to our DNA and live in a capacity that most closely matches, those that have gone before us. And so it's hard to see, but that's Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Maybe she's gluten intolerant. Okay. So thank you very much for your attention. Now, if you have any questions, by all means, just shoot them out at me. Yeah, in the back, go ahead.
Am I supposed to say I'm a grainaholic?
You can.
This is way back earlier, but you talked about the hominids, and you said they didn't die from the diseases we're dying from. I believe their life expectancy were into their 20s.
Yeah.
So they're not going to probably die of these diseases. So I don't think we can extrapolate from that species that they wouldn't have had anything that we deal with now. But do you have anything that you recall from your studying that talks about maybe people from 100 years ago that there were medical records? Because I'm on board with a lot of the processed stuff. I think it's bad. It's to make cows fatter, quicker, to make money faster. So I get that, but part of me still says moderation is still completely acceptable. I think there's a lot of different age groups in here, and I think if you tell somebody no more bagel, that's such an extreme lifestyle change that they're not going to have any success. But if you say try to have 3 bagels a week, well, then that's a different way of looking at it. It doesn't seem so drastic, and there might be more of a chance they stick with it. So I mean, do you have anything that you can say?
Well, even look 50. Look at 50 years ago. We don't even need to go 100 years ago.
Right.
Look at the rates of obesity and diabetes from 50 years ago. It's astounding. But to answer your question, is it all or nothing? By the time patients generally get to me at a women's health center to talk about their depression and their anxiety and their mood fluctuations, they've pretty much hit all the other stops along the way, and they haven't gotten any help. They're on about 3 or 4 prescription medications. So when I say, if you can tweak your diet, it's not going to be easy, but if you can cut out one food group and you can get off all your prescription medications, people do it like that. And they have great success, and they come in. And so it's tough, but I've never asked anybody to do something that I myself haven't done. And so not everybody is at that point yet. I certainly have told people, this is what I recommend cutting out. They never show up again because they weren't ready. Sometimes.
Did you say all or nothing, or is a cutback helpful?
Well, if I told you that by eliminating all of this, if you eliminated one factor in your lifestyle that you wouldn't have cancer, would you do it? You probably would. And I'm not saying that grains cause cancer, but I'm saying that what I was trying to really get the point to everyone, that even though you don't feel bad eating grains, my husband sure as heck didn't, and I kind of had to twist his arm to see if he would go off of them with me, because he couldn't really say, why not? I feel great. But they're affecting each and every one of us, okay? And it just is, I don't know when your tipping point will be of that inflammation level to when you're gonna start having symptoms, okay? So myself, I'll use myself as an example. I've been gluten-free for about 4 years, okay? I've eaten paleo for 2, okay? Certain circumstances, maybe I'm gonna have on my birthday, my mom will make me a real deal chocolate cake, all right? And I dive in. I feel like garbage the next day. I don't think it undoes all the good work that I've done for, the 11 months leading up to that. But for me, I take my health to the point of, I really don't want to do damage. If I know what I'm eating is causing me damage, I don't want to go down that path. It's a food. You know, it's a food. Yeah, and I'm sorry, did that answer your question? I know I kind of went on a little bit, but.
Can I add to
Yeah,
that?
please, Dr. Couri, yeah.
I think in an ideal world, if we all had the luxury of being officially tested to see if we are gluten sensitive by having blood work, then we would know to what degree we have to avoid gluten. Because we test a lot of patients for food sensitivities, and there's quite a few that don't necessarily test positive to a high degree of gluten sensitivity. There's percentage of patients who carry the genes HLA-DQ2, HLA-DQ8. If you carry these genetic markers that will significantly increase your risk of not only having celiac disease or being gluten sensitive, then by all means, that has to be an all or nothing. But how many of us have had that testing at our doctor's office? We don't typically go in for our yearly exam and get our food sensitivity testing, unless you're a patient of Minor Hopes, or have, or have our HLA, DQ2, and DQ8 checked. So because of that, we then just have to make kind of global recommendations that, in general, and this is how I tell patients, in general, unless you're specifically tested, I recommend that you minimize gluten. Now, let's look at your family history. Oh, your dad had Alzheimer's. Your mom's diabetic. You yourself are on a statin. Those are very, very important flags for me as a physician to say, okay, there are some smoldering fires here, and if we could maybe take away the piece, or look at that piece of the puzzle that may be the fuel for those fires, all of those chronic morbidities, then maybe that piece of the puzzle is gluten. And so that's kind of how I do it. I try to look at a patient's individuality, look at their genetic makeup the best I can, but also look at their family history and trace back and see how much of a risk that patient may be at for having oxidative-related damage from inflammation.
Whenever you say you're gluten-free, I'm assuming you mean you're probably grain-free.
Yeah,
right.
For the majority, I am now. Every now and then,
Like you said, a piece of
I'll
cake.
treat myself to a gluten-free pizza at One World. You know, for me, I just feel I feel better. I didn't get to this point overnight. This has been a journey for me of fine-tuning what I feel good eating, what I don't feel good eating. You know, for paleo, it says no dairy. I eat goat cheese. Okay, I feel okay with that. So I think we all have to modify this and fine-tune it to what I can handle. Maybe Dr. Couri can't handle, but she can eat fine. Maybe I can't eat fine. So, you know, it takes a little finesse. You learn your body.
I think it's hard because you don't always feel bad. I mean, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, some of us don't feel bad.
If you go just by how you feel, we can all end up in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
The new Aurelio's pizza place on Sterling has really good gluten-free
Oh, do they?
pizza. I was just there.
Oh, thank you.
The new Aurelio's Pizza Place on Sterling
Aurelio's.
has
Yeah.
gluten-free pizza. That's good.
It's always good to know little gems of where to go. Yeah. Okay.
There's still flours that you don't
They're still
know what they're
great.
made of.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. If you're celiac, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'm not celiac. Yeah.
Hope you're a very good presenter. Your
Oh, thank
diction and your delivery is very, very good.
I was a vocalist. Can you tell?
Yeah.
And I know this can sound really lofty,
Yes.
but it would really behoove you to really give the people to young families without scaring them to death on how to logically feed their children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have 3 grandsons and I see manifestations of interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the family feeds them well, but I know if you could make a video that is very, very simple, that would not scare young moms and dads. No, I mean, where
It's true.
really
I hear you.
not-
There's probably something out there. To implement something.
Yeah.
Yes,
Point.
but I'm talking about for young families.
Yeah.
To give them hope that they can go step by step to really help their children and help their little family unit.
Mm-hmm. Good idea. Anybody? There you go, in the black
I think
one.
that's a very good gift.
Yeah.
I have a friend who needs to talk to you.
you know where to find me.
If I tell her about this tomorrow, how long would it take for her to get an appointment with you?
Not very long, a couple weeks. I mean, I don't look that far ahead in my schedule. I just take every day as it comes. But I mean, a couple weeks. We're not talking months.
Okay,
No. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you get tested? What do you have to do?
Blood test, okay? For sensitivities, it's a blood test. Same for celiac disease. If you see a gastroenterologist and you have, there's a good chance, in the old diagnostic criteria, you'd actually have to have a biopsy of your small intestine for celiac disease. But for our purposes, everything is through blood. If people are interested in either testing and you have been gluten-free, please reintroduce gluten back into your diet, or any food groups for that matter that you've been withholding. For most accurate testing, you need some exposure for at least 2 to 3 weeks before you have your blood work drawn. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
In regards to oatmeal, I know it doesn't naturally contain gluten, and yet it's still on the list of grains. So can you explain again why that should be off the list?
Yeah, well, it's a grain. So again, if you're really adhering to completely eliminating grains, you would eliminate oatmeal as well. I think that oatmeal, not super high. I mean, I don't know, Katrina or Leslie, I mean, on the glycemic index, where oatmeal falls, if it really spikes, I'd have to look it up. Moderate? Okay, so it might spike your blood sugar, and so that would be a reason, as to why it would be adverse. But again, I guess if you're really nitpicking.
But if you have protein, it's not as dangerous as
Correct, yeah, correct. There's no gluten in it, yeah. Yeah.
sometimes you have to get gluten-free because it's contaminated.
I'm sorry.
Not all grains contain gluten.
Correct. Not all grains contain
I
gluten.
would ask another question too. I read several articles that people who are gluten-free who go to Europe don't have any problems. Is that true?
It is true. They have different wheat than we do. Far less gluten content. So for a lot of people, they don't have any symptoms.
Is it the wheat, right? So they don't use GMO?
Yeah, non-GMO. Usually it's not genetically modified. Yeah. Anybody? Shout them out. Yeah, in the corner. Go ahead.
What is the name of that test?
Oh, the test? Oh, sorry, yeah. It's health, first word health, diagnostic is the second word, diagnostic. Just laboratory, right? Health diagnostic laboratory. Health diagnostic laboratory. Yeah, in the pink, go ahead. Yeah, you. Hi, Shirley. You're the winner.
I have a testimony.
Oh, do share.
79 years of age.
Do you want me?
Do you want to come up here?
Mic?
So people can hear you?
I'm coming to you. I'll just be close. Raphael told me I didn't have to hand it to you, so I'll be close.
My husband was diagnosed at 79 with celiac, and he nearly died. And he has been gluten-free ever since. He just went and had his yearly checkup, and the doctor said he is several years younger, and he's going to be 86 this year. He said his blood work is good.
Yay.
But
Thank you,
I
Shirley.
take care of him.
That's the answer.
That's right.
I have a thyroid issue, and I think part of it's being attributed to gluten. I've been trying on my own to go gluten-free, but it's very hard to figure out what is what. I do have a doctor, but not for the gluten.
Yeah.
So do you have a program here that you can come to and get involved in, or how does that work?
Yeah.
As far as, do I get by the physician, or?
Yeah. We don't have a specific program for grains or gluten per se, but we do have a really wonderful dietitian. Her name is Leslie, and she is very well versed in grains, and so she can do one-on-one counseling and food planning with you. We do have a program. It's called the TLC program. It's the Total Lifestyle by Couri, and that's a 15-week wellness program where we also do that comprehensive food sensitivity testing. We do the health diagnostic laboratory testing. And so we create a plan specifically for what your needs are, depending on what your medical history is. And so that could be an option too if you really want a lot of in-depth one-on-one, or I would be happy to meet with you and talk about grains and gluten and how we can, you know, because it's sneaky, isn't it? It's a challenge.
It's because, you know, one thing you read says it's okay, rice cakes, but I don't think it has.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, because you hear it both ways. And then some of the other things that are gluten-free, when you start looking at the ingredients, it's got rice flour and wheat, or not wheat, but it's got, I forget now, rice and maybe corn. Maybe it's got the corn.
Yeah.
So you're talking about corn, dairy, wheat, all the grains.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
When you're finished, can you roll that back to
Oh, sure.
where that doctor was that had
The
protocol?
pro-omega, yeah, the fish oil protocol.
So we can write it.
Sure can.
Because it's too hard to see.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's brain health
No.
education, and that protocol is actually on his website. Oh, no worries. Let me just give you, just want my notes here. I have it written on there. I'll just give you my notes. There you go. Yeah. Question?
Yeah.
Where does quinoa fit in as far as being a grain?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I kind of laughed to see it on your.
Yeah, it is. You know, quinoa is technically gluten-free. It does kind of fall in that family. It's a seed. Yeah, correct. So, but again, you know, if it's lower glycemic, it's got a higher protein content. So that, and for me, it falls in the category if I'm craving some, you know, some pasta maybe. I'll get some quinoa pasta, you know, and kind of satisfy that taste once in a blue moon. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
When you see omega-3 and DHA, is that the same thing?
Yes and no. It is. You know, when you look at, let's say, a bottle of fish oil, it's usually composed of DHA and EPA. DHA has been studied a little bit more than EPA, so that's kind of why I focused on that. But yes, fish oil for our terms, fish oil.
If you think of DHA, that's brain, very, very beneficial for brain. EPA, very beneficial for heart, cardiovascular, disease, blood vessel health. And
so will it say DHA 100 milligrams? Is that, or 1,000, I mean, is that what it will say, DHA 1,000?
You have to look, if you look at the bottle, it may say 1,000 milligrams of fish oil on the front of the bottle. But that doesn't mean a thing.
Different ratios.
Right, so you need to look at the back of the bottle, look at the label, and it'll tell you how many milligrams of DHA and how many milligrams of EPA are in there. Yeah, and there's, like Nordic Naturals makes several different versions of fish oil. Some people need more DHA, some people need more EPA, just depending on what problem, what medical condition we're trying to treat.
We have time for one more question in the back. Do you recommend all of the other supplements that he recommends in his book, like the turmeric and the resveratrol and the alpha-lipoic acid?
I do. I know that we have to take price into effect. These are not cheap. And so if I had to pick my most important, those are what I listed up top. But I do think that there's excellent data, especially with turmeric. It's a great one. Alpha-lipoic acid, really important. Yeah, I do.
Alpha-lipoic acid is my new favorite. After reading Perlmutter and talking to him and spending a little bit more time delving into the brain health literature, alpha-lipoic acid is a very, very powerful antioxidant, but also very important for brain health as it's linked to that BDNF that Hope was talking about. Yes, but a good quality one, because that does make a difference. You can spend a lot of money on alpha-lipoic acid and you can get a really inferior quality product. So
Leslie and Sue, I believe you've got some prizes.
Yes, and I just want to make one quick announcement. I know it's a lot of information to take in. It's overwhelming. It's hard to digest all of this, but no pun intended. But Sue, one of our nurse practitioners, Terry, our other nurse practitioners not here tonight, Leslie, myself, and Hope, we make it our passion, our mission. We love doing these things. We love going to conferences and staying current. I mean, we're very nerdy. I mean, we love, love, love to learn. We're constantly going to the most current and up-to-date conferences that you can get your hands on. And we love to share that information. So if you're wondering how we can get that information to you, because really that's why we're there, is like us on Facebook, because we are constantly putting out very informational and current studies and information and recipes and just little tidbits of information that I think you'll find helpful. Also, if you don't already subscribe to our newsletter, do so. That's put out once a month. And it has also very informative and much more extended versions, articles, versus what we'd put on Facebook. So, once you do subscribe to our newsletter, then you are on our emailing list. So if something comes out in the media that's that's very controversial, like, oh, fish oil causes prostate cancer, because that came out and everybody was like, what? So then we will then put out a very well-written, educated type response as to whether that's true or not. So that way you at least have a source that you can trust with the information that you're reading. Okay.
And the videos are available on the website.
The videos, Raphael.
Thank you, Raphael.
Thank you, Raphael. Yeah, and so the videos are available. So all of our Embracing Wellness lectures are available online on the video.
So let's give some stuff away. Did everybody put in their hat?
I know you're not going to give that bag away.
Leslie's the picker. Are these separate or together?
Charm, common? Cammon? Charm? Charm? Yay!
Do you want the...
Maybe share.
Sharon!
Sharon.
Oh.
I was going to say, I'm like, that's Sharon.
Leslie needs some fish oil.
Charm?
It looks like Charm.
Would you like my glasses?
We've got another cute little bag to take to the farmer's market.
Colleen Wolf.
Colleen.
Colleen.
There you go.
Yay.
That's Colleen.
Did
How
she
about
get
a
my
copy
Eat More
of
Kale back?
Brain Brain? With the sleeve.
With a sleeve.
And it even has
It even has the color. We should have gotten an extra one signed by him.
Oh, I should
to give away next time.
I'll just have to go find
I'm gonna hear it in September when I go hear him.
Christine Andreessen.
Oh,
Hey,
Cindy.
there you go, Christine. Okay, the next one is the Practical Paleo book. This is a goodie.
I have that book, I really like it.
Yeah.
Sandy Myers.
Oh,
there you go,
Sandy. Yay.
Pass that baby back. There you go.
You never know what you're going to get.
Then finally we have a fish oil and a probiotic for you. A little combo pack.
Elaine Keller.
Did they hear?
There you go.
Or did they?
Thank you everybody for your attention. I appreciate it. Have a great night. Thank you.
Sheets with the 5 questions for us for next class. If you want to leave them here on this white chair, that way we can collect them.
If not, just email them. No worries.